Hello, Environmental Policy 2 students. This is Dr. Conway back for week 7 or lesson 7 on inventory systems. You recall that last week we dealt with monitoring plans, and monitoring plans and inventory systems are quite closely related. In fact, as monitoring plans become more sophisticated over time, which they usually do, they become a way of building inventory systems, particularly for chemicals management, but also for biodiversity, for ecosystems, for any type of inventory, climate change, greenhouse gas inventory, any types of inventories are possible. And of course, what monitoring allows you to do, and then subsequently more sophisticated inventory systems, is it allows you to direct limited resources to the highest priority items for protection of environmental health or human health in the environment. And typically, what happens over time is the number of sampling sites in a monitoring exercise or monitoring initiative become more plentiful, covering a larger area. The number and types of parameters being sampled for, i.e., the types of chemicals or the types of species or whatever the inventory is about, or sources of greenhouse gas emissions, etc., become more refined, and people understand them better, and they then become part of the testing protocol. The frequency of monitoring becomes more consistent. There's a detailed monitoring plan, and that's followed with much greater frequency. The methodologies for monitoring air, water, and land get improved. And finally, there's an integrated open data management program will be created, and those management programs ultimately become inventory systems. And the creation of inventory systems is critical because it allows you to look at high priority items across time and space. I mean, you have a constant building of the inventory system, so you might have data for 20, 30 years of a particular compound or a particular environmental problem. Inventories are numerous. There can be chemical inventories. There's pollutant release and transfer registries, which are a form of inventory, like in Canada's PRTR system. Greenhouse gas inventories, biodiversity inventories, endangered species inventories, wetland inventories, etc., etc., etc. And what inventories allow you to do is monitor the environmental issue across time and space, as I was saying, and measure progress for environmental initiatives over time. And that's what we're seeking when we do inventory systems. Now, there are two broad categories of inventory systems. In Canada, we'll have our national chemical inventory, which will cover all of the chemicals that are in the market in Canada. And it will also provide a great deal of precision with respect to the highest risk type chemicals, which becomes a major focus of these types of inventories. Where are they? How many do we have? How are they being moved? How are they being used? And so on would be covered off in the inventory. We also have pollutant release and transfer inventories, but those are dedicated to specific high risk compounds or high risk items that are either emitted to the environment or transferred to another industry or moved off to recycling. And industries are required to report to the PRTR program on a consistent basis with respect to their use of priority toxic substances. And that becomes a reporting priority for all organizations, but primarily for industry. And with that improved tracking system that comes from PRTRs and from inventory systems, we can direct resources to the highest risk related items, and those toxic chemicals that are of the highest risk to the environment or human health. And we can act with greater confidence about where these compounds can be found, who has them, how are they being used, how are they being transferred. And that's a critical issue for any country in building an inventory system. And then, of course, the PRTR type systems, the pollutant release and transfer systems, different from from a broad chemical inventory system, in that the inventory is concerned with chemical products in the market overall, all chemical products, whereas the PRTR is concerned with monitoring releases of chemicals into the environment as pollutants that are highly hazardous or highly toxic. And that's a very important distinction. Now, building inventory systems is something that is very common in the environment field, and that those inventory systems can be national, like I'm just talking to you now, but also industries have to maintain their own inventory systems for chemicals because they need to be able to report on where those chemicals are to the government, to the PRTR system, and to the inventory system, the broad general inventory system. So a lot of what young environment experts will be doing within companies is maintaining these types of company-wide inventory systems. And that can be a big job if your company's big and multinational, has several facilities, and so on. Maintaining a proper chemical inventory can be quite a elaborate exercise. Even small companies need to be able to know where their chemicals are. And you remember when we talked about the globally harmonized system of classification of, and labeling of chemicals. Your inventory system helps you make sure that the chemicals are being transported, stored, used, and so on in a way that's consistent with the direction that the globally harmonized system provides and the chemical fact sheets that go along with the globally harmonized system. So all of these things are related: the globally harmonized system, monitoring systems, and inventory systems. And all three are critical to proper chemicals management. But similarly, there are inventory systems and within other fields of the environment, whether that be biodiversity, ecosystem, and so on and so forth. So make sure you're well aware of these systems because they will be a prominent part of most jobs out there in terms of building and maintaining these inventory systems, whether they be at the facility level, company-wide level, municipal governments, provincial or federal. They'll all have inventory systems, particularly in the field of chemicals. So when you're reading this material, be aware that these sort of areas, the monitoring, the globally harmonized system, the inventory systems, and the different types of inventory systems and the different types of monitoring are all critical issues to understand when you're going into a field of environmental protection, and particular environmental protection in the area of chemicals and greenhouse gases or other pollutant emissions. So be aware of that, read this stuff carefully, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye now.